This video goes over your multiple representations practice key. Feel free to scroll through to the questions that you missed and that you need to review on how to solve. Question 1. Write an equation that would represent the following table. To figure this one out, we're going to start by finding the slope. And to find slope, we're going to find the change in y over the change in x. So our change in x, when I go from -12 to -6, I'm actually adding 6 because I'm becoming less negative. And then to go from -6 to -4, I'm adding 2. And then -4 to -3, I'm adding 1. My change in y values are +12, +4, and +2. So when I put change in y over change in x, I have 12 over 6, 4 over 2, and 2 over 1, which all simplify to a value of 2 for our slope. It is positive because both of these changes are positive as we move from the left to the right. To figure out our y-intercept, we can use our slope to figure out what y would be when x is 0. So to get from -3 to 0, I would need to add 3. And our pattern here is that when our change in x is 1, we multiply that by 2 to get our change in y. So we're going to add 6 to 18, which gives us 24 for our y-intercept, giving us the equation y equals 2x plus 24. Question 2, we're given a table again, and we're writing the equation of the line represented by the table. To find our slope, we do change in y over change in x. So to get from 1 to -4, I'm subtracting 5, and my change in x, I'm adding 10. So when I do change in y over change in x, I end up with -1/2 as my most simplified form. And then my y-intercept is the y value when x is 0, which is provided to us in this table. So I know my y-intercept's -4. So my equation will be y equals -1/2 times x minus 4. For question 3, we're given a graph and we're asked to write the equation based on just the graph information. So we have to remember there are two parts to every equation. There's our slope and there is our y-intercept. The nice thing about being provided a graph is it will typically show us our y-intercept. Remember that our y-intercept is our value for y when x is 0. So when x is 0 on our graph here, our y value is +2. That means our b is going to be that +2. To figure out our slope, we're going to find two perfect points. One of those can be our y-intercept, and we can also find a perfect point right here. And then we're going to see how many steps it takes, and we're going to find the rise over run. To get from this point, we would have to go down 1, 2, 3, down 3. So that means our rise is -3 because we're moving down and we're doing that 3 times. Our run, we have to move 1 to the right, so that's a +1. This means our slope would be -3. Then all we have to do is place these values in our slope-intercept form setting here. And we're going to have y equals -3 times x plus 2 for our equation for this graph. Question 4 also gives us a graph and we're told to find the equation. So we're going to start with finding our slope and our y-intercept, and then we'll put them into our equation format. Remember, to find our y-intercept, it's the value of y when x is 0. So when x is 0, our y-intercept is once again +2. And then to find our slope, we're going to find some perfect points. We have this perfect point, this perfect point, this perfect point, and this perfect point to work with, so you can choose any of those. I'm going to choose to use this one and the y-intercept. To get from this point here, which is at -2, 1, to my y-intercept, which is 0, 2, I would have to rise 1, and I would have to run 1, 2 to the right. So if I think about my rise over run, that's going to be a positive 1 over a positive 2, meaning my slope is 1/2. Now that we have both our m value and our b value, we can plug those into our format here and get our equation of this line, which is y equals 1/2 times x plus 2. When you're given a word problem and you're told to write an equation that represents the relationship between a variable and another variable, we're going to figure out which one is y and which one is x. So for this problem, m is our x value because monthly payments are happening over multiple times. So that's our variable x. And then t is going to be like our y. So I need to see, to figure out my slope, what number is multiplied by the number of monthly payments. This $75 is an initial payment, so we'll come back to that, but that's not getting multiplied each month, but 42 each month, that's getting multiplied. So our slope's 42. This initial payment of $75 is our y-intercept. It's that one-time fee, it's our constant. So then I have my equation of y equals 42x plus 75, or we could plug in the variables we were provided, t equals 42 times m plus 75. Number 6, we have another word problem. So for this one, we're writing an equation to model the relationship between h, the number of hours, so that's changing, and c, the total cost, our dependent variable. Now we need to find what number is being multiplied by our variable h, and that's our slope. $250 is just how much it costs to bring your car into the garage, and then it's $175 for every hour. So our slope's $175, and that one-time fee is going to be our y-intercept of $250. We then create our equation, c equals 175 times h plus 250, or we could put y equals 175x plus 250. For question 7, we're given another graph that just has some context to it, where we're looking at time versus total cost, and we're writing the equation that matches the graph. So we can start by finding our y-intercept, which is 40, because that is where our line crosses the y-axis, and then we see a perfect point right here. To get from our y-intercept to that perfect point, we go up 10, and we go right 1. That's why we have to look at these intervals. Even though this space is much greater, that still only represents one change. So our change in y over change in x is 10 over 1, or 10, which means our equation will be y equals 10 times x plus 40. For question 8, we're given a table and we're asked to create an equation in slope-intercept form to model the relationship. Here we're told that hours hiked is h and altitude is a, and we don't see the x and y, but we know that the left column in vertical tables is always x and the right column is always y because we read left to right. So now we're able to find our change in y over change in x to figure out our slope. To get from 490 to 508, we add 18. And to get from 0 to 2, we add 2. So when I take my change in y, which is 18, and I put that over change in x, which is 2, I get a slope of 9. To find our y-intercept, we look for what our y value is when x is 0, so that's 490. And our equation is then y equals 9 times x plus 490. For question 9, we have another graph where we're creating a slope-intercept form equation. We find our y-intercept pretty quickly because that is where our line crosses the y-axis, that's positive 160. And then we find another perfect point and we figure out our rise over run. To get from our y-intercept to this point on the right of our line, we have to go down 20, 40. So we're going down 40 and over 1. That means our rise is negative 40 over our run of 1, which means our slope is negative 40. So our equation would then be y equals negative 40 times x plus 160. Question 10 gives us 4 different representations, and we're trying to figure out which one does not fit because it doesn't show the same situation as the others. To do this, it helps to get them all into equation form. So when I look at answer choice A and I have this situation or word problem, we see that John already has $25 and continues to save $150 each day. So with this word problem, we're seeing y equals that 25 that he already had plus $1.50 each day. This situation matches with answer choice B exactly. Those are the same equation. So now we're looking to see if C or D doesn't match. To do this, we can check our table by either finding our rise over run. So let's go ahead and do that. To get from 28 to 29.50, we would add $1.50, and our slope here would be 150. We would have to work backwards to get our y value when x is 0. So to do that, I would have to do minus 2, which means I would need to do minus 3 on the y row, which gets us 25. So again, we see that equation of y equals 150 times x plus 25. So let's check D and see if it works. The y-intercept checks out. It's at 25. So now let's see if our slope is okay. I found this perfect point here. And to get there, we would go up 5, and we go to the right 5, 10, 15, 20. If I put my rise over run, that gets me a slope of 1/4, which would mean our equation is y equals 1/4 times x plus 25. This slope doesn't match everything else, so D would be our answer.